say they firmly believe that one day the wall will come down. And I say, how can you hold on to that hope? When you see this day after day after day, and they just say, we just believe it will. I mean, and maybe you have to have that hope to keep working. That's the only thing that keeps you going.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Blom, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Yes, good day, everybody. This is another episode, a special episode of a series of episodes that I'm doing because at the end of March, I will be walking for the 11th time a 100-mile walk in the Seattle area. So what I try to do during those special episodes, that I talk with people that I closely work with or that I know that they're also passionate about ending hunger, poverty, and injustice in the world. So I'm really glad with today's guest, and we got to know each other even better a couple of weeks ago when we were on a trip to Guatemala to see the projects of Growing Hope globally and of Church World Service as well. But as always, my guests will introduce, themselves. So please go ahead, Jim and Linda.
I'm Jim Rufenacht from Archbold, Ohio. I'm a farmer. I grew up on a farm, lived at the same place all but about 10 years of my life. When soon after Linda and I were married, we lived in different places. So the farm has been my life. And today I'm trying to do less of it because our sons are part of the farm. We have a family farm that amounts to my brother, myself, our two sons, and his son. So it would be considered a family farm. And we raise crops, corn and soybeans and wheat, and we feed cattle. So that's kind of who Jim is. Agriculture's been my life. I live it, sleep it, go to Guatemala with it, and all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Jim, is it something that your parents did as well, or are you the first generation?
No, that's a good question because our son lives on the farm that my grandfather and grandmother moved to, so he'd be like a fourth generation on that farm. So we have history here, and we lived where my folks moved when they got married, and today our youngest son lives there. So yeah, there's history there, and
yeah, no, that's great. Your wife, though, is not a farmer. Well, she's a farmer now, right? But
sort of.
Yeah. So Linda, tell a little bit about your upbringing, from where, and how you got involved with this farm and what you have been doing before that.
Okay, so my name is Linda Rufenacht, and I grew up here in Archbold in Northwest Ohio also, but I grew up in town. I was a Mennonite pastor's daughter, and so, but I had grandparents on the farm, so we had a farming history in our family as well. I went to Goshen College and got a degree in home economics education and did teach for a few years. Then I was a stay-at-home mom for our two sons for a few years. And then I took a job as manager of the quilt shop at Souter Village. And I did that for about 24 years and then retired at what some people would consider early so that we could participate in some short-term service projects in the winter months when Jim wasn't quite so busy on the farm. And I currently volunteer year-round, like at our local 10,000 Villages store, which is a fair trade store that kind of, supports artisans around the world. Kind of doing the craft side of things, like Growing Hope works in the agricultural part of things, so people can support their families. And so I work there a few days a month, and that's also part of MCC, our Mennonite Central Committee. So and how I got involved with Growing Hope was mainly because Jim got involved with Growing Hope. And, there's lots of support services that need to be done. And but I do really believe in its mission, of helping people help themselves and making them food sustainable. And especially since we've done some traveling and where you can really see people, individuals, hear their stories. And that's really affirming to the work that we do. And, is energizing, I think, to actually meet people and walk and talk with them and get to know people who are impacted by the work that you do.
No. And I have to tell my listeners, Jim and Linda are really passionate about all of this. I mean, it's not for nothing that they quickly skipped, their personal lives and went into the organization. I think we are still interested. How did you get involved with each other then? How did that happen? Where did you find each other?
Oh dear. Well, I was at college. He was home farming. And so I came home in the summers, and we were both attending the same young adult Bible study. And that's where I first met Jim. Prior to that, his mom, our mothers had recruited me to sell Fuller Brush products, a door-to-door salesman for his mom. And so I knew his mom before I knew him, but I really hated that job.
I think she likes me better than my mom. That's good.
Well, that's a good thing, right? Yeah.
Good thing, but yeah, that was not my calling. Let's just put it that way. Door-to-door sales was not my calling. So, but then, we met through that Bible study, and one night he asked me to go water skiing, and I said yes, and that was the beginning of all of that. So,
and Linda told me, because for you then, when you got married, you had to, be part of the farm. And
sure.
And so did you continue your own work, or did you really become part of all the work that is related with farming?
No, I did not do much tractor driving, very little of that, or that sort of thing, actual field work or working on the farm. I was teaching school in our first years of marriage, and, I took meals to the field, and I, a lot of ran errands and got parts and all kinds of things like that. But as far as actually working in the field, I did very little of that sort of thing.
Okay. I would like to go to you, Jim. What makes you so passionate about farming? What is it, Oh,
that's a good question. Part of it, and I said it, it's been my life. That's who I am. I grew up with it. I lived it. I thought about it all the time. But yeah, what keeps me driving? I as I look about, I see a need for food, and that's kind of our passion is to feed people, and to see a crop grow or to see a animal grow. That's a rewarding thing for me. There's nothing. I love to plant, but harvest is the real deal, So, yeah, that's what drives me on. I think,
okay.
That feeling of accomplishment through growing stuff. Sure.
And is that also something that grew upon you, Linda? Do you have this, now a same type of wonderment or passion, or less so?
It is so much our life that it's, it's hard to say I don't, although, without being as involved on the farm as Jim, I don't know if I would say I'm quite as passionate as he is about it, but with raising two sons and him farming together, all our dinner conversations revolved around farming, and,
Yeah.
That was okay, but I got tired of it sometimes. There could be quite a life in that, but it is who we are, and I'm certainly very supportive of that and what they do, and I think it's really cool that our sons are both full-time in the farms, and our grandkids are certainly interested in farming, and it's certainly a value system that's great to pass down to the next generation.
What I wanted to ask you, Jim, is if you compare it when you started it, when you were young and when you ultimately took over the farm, and you compare it with how you work, today and what the issues are, is it similar, or are there big changes? And if there are changes, what are those changes?
Sure, it obviously is not the same. I started full-time in 1972, so I've been farming for about 51 years as a occupation. Before then, it was with my dad too, so it's a lot different, yet at the same time you depend on weather, you depend on other people, part of the agribusiness group that we work with. They are important to us. That part hasn't changed. The volume and stuff has changed. As I think about it, back in 1980, a farmer fed around 70 people. Today, a farmer feeds 155. So that the scope and the size has changed, as I look at it. Dad and I probably were farming 300-400 acres when I started, when I took on some ground, and he was milking cows at that time, and we fed some hogs. Today we feed only cattle and quite a few of them actually, but also at the same time, here we are supporting 6 households too with one operation, I think, and that's what I see somewhat of the difference. There's an efficiency that farmers have put into play here, and I'm not talking about buying things cheap and selling high. I'm talking about taking their assets and using them very wisely and able to spread them over space and time, so instead of having 5 sets of equipment, Rufenacht Farms has 1 set of equipment, which is way more efficient. It lets us use new technologies that we had none. When I started, technology mattered whether the tractor started or didn't start. Today it's about how much fertilizer's being put on. It's how much grain we're harvesting on the second. All that technology makes a difference, and that's one reason why I'm glad to see the boys take over, so that I don't have to know all that stuff.
I get it. Hey, but Jim, we also talked during our trip to Guatemala, and we will talk a little bit later about that. But I was listening to you, and you are also concerned about the whole sustainability issues that are going on. So you really follow closely what is happening and the changes that you might have to make or not make. So that's also a difference, I think, right? If you compare that when you started or not.
Yeah, sure is. Absolutely is. In 1972, we didn't think about sustainability. It was all about profitability. Today, sustainability is a part of our language, and we look at it in that way, soil health and animal health and that kind of stuff sustains us. We're not mining the ground, we're sustaining it, whether it's adding chemical fertilizers, whether it's putting on steer manure. I mean, all that plays into whether we're sustainable or not, including grass buffer strips along the creeks and structures that keep the ground from washing into the creeks. It's just huge, the investment that we make to be sustainable, and I think we are. But that's a great question and a pertinent question for all of us today. We all should be thinking about that, because I'm a farmer, I think about it. Well, anybody else should be thinking about it the same way.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to ask you, I mean, I'm from the Netherlands, and there, from the government side, there are a lot of new regulations for the farmers, and as a result, a lot of protests. And because I think one of the reasons is, or maybe the most important reason, is that there were no conversations with the farmers. So it's just from one day to another you have to change, and there are examples in other countries in the world where, in Denmark, for example, where the government was much more talking with the farmers, and there there are far less problems as far as I can see. How is that going, for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's government regulations. So far, they haven't been overly burdensome. Plus, the government helps, say, pay for them to some extent. The thing that we might have, and I don't know what they have in the Netherlands, is, say, like Farm Bureau is a agency that is a political activist for a farmer, which is actively lobbying in government, whether it's state or national government. There's other agencies, but that would be one that would come to my mind right away. We're part of that. We have input directly to them. If I want to talk to them, I can call them on the phone right now. So I think that conversation is more there than maybe not anyway. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. I would like to go slowly to the organization that we are both involved with. We are both board members of an organization called Growing Hope, and the listeners who did not listen to the episode that I did with the executive director Max Finberg, should really listen to that one. So I don't want to go too much into what Growing Hope globally is about. What I would like to talk with both of you about, and you alluded a little bit in the beginning, is how did you get involved with Growing Hope globally, and why, and what did it do to you as a couple and as a family, because I know those experiences that you got through Growing Hope, were important, I think, and how you looked at certain issues. So just one comment about to the listeners who did not listen to the episode with Max yet, is that Growing Hope globally is an NGO that works both with NGOs like mine that work around the world, with vulnerable communities, among others also farmers, and especially female farmers. But it also works with farmers in the US who then, are what we call doing, growing projects. So basically, simply said, it's part of the harvest, you sell, and the money you give to Growing Hope, and they use it to support food security programs around the world. Do I summarize that properly? And maybe not.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. So yeah, can you tell the listeners a bit about, how did you get involved, why, and what do you do exactly?
Okay. I mean, for us to get involved, we got contacted by MCC, which is Mennonite Central Committee, comparably to Church World Service. And also, luckily, here at Archibald, we're close to one of the founding people of Growing Hope, back then as Food Resource Bank, Vernon Sloan. And they got us together and over a meal that we bought for ourselves.
Yeah.
and told us about it, and explained it to us, and I think the draw to the farmer is that we can do something that we're really good at and give it as, to some extent, it's an expense. It's an expense to us, so it's tax deductible in that sense. That ain't I wouldn't say that's the main reason at all, but it's something that farmers can grab a hold of and be a part of. Farmers are long assets and short cash, so they could give asset here in a good way. And I think that was kind of how we got started. We were kind of notorious for starting the first beef growing project here at Archibald, so that was kind of new. Typically, it was field crops. So,
and then, as a result of being part of Growing Hope, you were also able to visit, projects around the world. Linda, tell about that. How was that?
Yeah, we've been to Kenya with a small group, and also now just recently to Guatemala. And I think, I just wish everybody could go, to those kind of places and see what's really happening. I mean, when you go and you actually meet people and talk with them and listen to them and hear their stories, I think you can't come home unchanged. I mean, because you've heard something from someone else's point of view, and we've always lived right here in Northwest Ohio, so we know how people think here, right? And what our lives are like here. But when you really get to know people from somewhere else, whose life stories are so different from yours, and whose culture is so different from yours, I think, it changes the way you think, and it also changes the way you feel. Changes your mind about that. Maybe there aren't, maybe I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the right ways to do things. And it also kind of changes your heart, gives you more compassion, I think, for other people in other situations. That would be the main thing that I can think of. It's just I wish everybody could take opportunities to expose yourself to those kinds of experiences, whether it's either when people come to the United States and you can get to know people, or if you can go. I think it would make us all better people, more world conscious and understanding.
So those visits, were they giving you, hope, or more, worry, or both?
Maybe both. I think when we went to Kenya, there's been I don't even remember, was that 2007? Something like that. I think that gave me a lot more hope. I mean, you saw people who really wanted to work hard and to improve themselves. It wasn't just a handout. They weren't just sitting there waiting, for somebody to take care of them. I think it gave me hope that, we could do something that mattered, that what we were doing really did make a difference in a lot of people's lives. I didn't come back from Kenya with much concern, and Guatemala gave me a few more concerns in that, the whole, you seem to see much more corruption and people who had been through a lot more trauma and that sort of thing there. And then it gives you a little bit of feeling like, how do you get past all of that? How do you develop policy or programs that can get past all of that? Although the people themselves were quite inspiring, I mean, when you could actually talk to the farmers, that, although it took 2 translators to get that done. those stories, hearing their life stories and their experiences were really inspiring. But then you hear all the other stuff about government and policy and everything, and it's like, wow, how do you work with all of that?
Yeah.
And make really good things happen.
Yeah, and just a quick note for the listeners, because I was also on the trip, and we went together to see, the indigenous community in Guatemala, who were, had been, murdered actually for many years, and excluded from participating in politics, name it. So a lot of traumatization, chased out of the area where they grew up, and some of them have been able to come back and restart their lives, but it is not easy for them at all. I mean, it's still very difficult, for me was really inspiring is to see the role of women who really, many of them were outspoken, and a lot of pride in what they do and what they have accomplished. So at least I came back with that. But I wanted to ask you, so after the visit to Kenya and after the visit to Guatemala, you come back in your community and then you have stories. How is that going? Are you able to tell the stories? Do people want to hear your story? And if they want to hear it, are you able to inspire then with your experiences, your community, or is that,
I think we feel a real openness to hearing the story. People will ask, so how was your trip? And they would just want to know, what we did and what went on. After we came back from Kenya, we actually visited the project that our growing project supported. So we did a program at church with slides and talked one Sunday evening, and a lot of people came. I mean, all the people who were supporting Growing Hope here wanted to hear, what was really going on and see the stories, and that was really a good experience. And since we're home now, we've only been home a few weeks, but because we were in Arizona for a whole month. But a lot of people have asked me anyway, what did you do? What did you see? What do you think? And are really open to hearing that. There are, as in all communities in the world these days, there are divisions, in the way people think and approach things. So there have been a few people who have, well, this was more based on like when we worked with the immigrants in Tucson, but people would say, hey, weren't you afraid? I mean, they're based on the fear of, what they think immigrants, who they think immigrants are, and so there is some fear-based kind of things going on as well. And so I guess telling the story, hopefully we can show another side of that, or another aspect of that, and maybe help to open their minds a little bit to other possibilities as well. But in general, I would say most people are affirming, and want to hear the stories, want to learn what they can from our experiences.
Outside of going to Kenya as well as Guatemala, you also now have gone and worked on the border in the US, right? Tell about why you decided to do that, and how that was. What type of experience was that? Was it similar to Kenya, different? What did you learn? What were you surprised about?
After spending this is our second winter that we worked at an immigration welcome center run by the Catholic Church in Tucson. And we go for about a month in the month of February. And then after the trip to Guatemala and everything, we thought going to the border would help us maybe to get a fuller picture. We'd seen Guatemala and some of the forces that push people to immigration. We'd met with people in Tucson, heard some stories there of people who were coming through and trying to immigrate, and families as well as young adults and all kinds of different people. So we thought going to the border would help to kind of fill out some of that, the bigger picture for us. And it did. We spent 2 days there with a couple who work with immigrants just across the border in Agua Prietas, and they live in Douglas, which is, right. It's like one city but divided by the country line. And we saw some different things there. That, like, one of the places they work is at I don't know what they call it, a resource center or something, where it's like just steps away from the gate in the wall where they put the people back through that they've rejected from going across. And so, they work there with them. So we spent a little time there. We spent some time just walking along the wall on both sides, the Mexican side and the US side, walking and praying and talking, about just your impressions of how, just seeing that wall stretching up the mountain for miles, in a cleared path beside it, and all the lights and the cameras and everything that are all over it. I don't know. It just is so sad, I think, what's going on, and how much fear plays into that. Everybody's fear, our fear, immigrants fear, the Border Patrol. They're working off of fear-based thing too, in my mind. It's, and then the cartel is there watching. We saw the humongous houses in Douglas where the cartel, no, it wasn't Douglas, it was Agua Prietas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where the cartel, they say, oh yeah, those are cartel members' houses, and you see all of that, and it's, I don't know, it's very sobering, I would say, in a way. Because you hear the stories. The friends of ours there, they talk with Border Patrol. They'll talk and work with anybody on all parts of that. And they say they firmly believe that one day the wall will come down. And I say, how can you hold on to that hope? When you see this day after day after day, and they just say, we just believe it will. And maybe you have to have that hope to keep working. That's the only thing that keeps you going. But, and the thing is, my main thing that I came back with was, the more I learned, we learned bits and pieces from all three of those locations, the more I realize I know so little. It's so complicated and so involved that, I'm glad to know what I know. And it seems like every viewpoint that I hear has a nugget of truth in it, but then none of them have the total big picture. And how do we bring that all together and make policy for those people who make policies, or yeah. And how do you do that? I do not know, but it's a good thing to think about and to pray about, as we go forward.
Yeah. Jim, thanks for that, Linda. Jim, can you tell then, what did you do during a month? Because you guys really worked there, right? It's not, it was not a vacation. So
yeah, we worked at an immigration center and basically fed meals at noon to those people coming through there. During the time we were there this year, it was common to see 200 plus people coming through the center. And they don't stay there, but they come and go through, and the center helps them to find transportation to their sponsors and that type of thing. So we did that. This year we did it 2 days a week. The other 2 days we actually worked in the diaper bank of Southern Arizona and did orders and stuff for nonprofit organizations that use them for supplies. So that was kind of our thing. It was typically, we went there, to work in the sun and do stuff like that. And the weather was nicer than Ohio, usually.
Yeah.
It's a combination.
It's a combination of being able to go where the weather's nicer and find a volunteer place that feels good to work at.
Hmm. No, I really think it's great that you have been doing that now twice. Okay, no, thank you so much for sharing those experiences. I find it really inspiring. Always when I meet with people that are, willing to push their own horizon, to widen their perspectives and to learn from others. I wish, more people would do that. It's one of the reasons that I've started this podcast also to share the different perspectives of different people I talk with. And I hope that what people will get, and I think also something that you have learned, there are differences, there are different perspectives, but there is also a lot that people have in common. And if we would focus on that, you can start a dialogue, and the dialogue should be the beginning of making this world a little bit better. So that's my hope. I would like to bring you both to the walk, because this podcast is a spin-off of my walk that I started more than 10 years ago. And at the end of the month, I will go again. I don't know why, because I'm not in good shape. But yeah, when I'm walking with others, it becomes a spiritual experience. That's kind of strange, but you start talking about, thinking about life and this and that. And then when I'm accompanied by other people, we often talk not only about spirituality, but also about the next generation, and that some people are saying they're different, others are saying, no, it's similar. My question to you is, what do you see happening in your own community among youth and spirituality, among youth and religion,
Yeah, we're not so active with youth other than our grandkids and stuff like that. But I think there's a definite interest in religion, spirituality, however you want to say it. I think compared to when I was young, I would say they're more in tune with that than I may have been. And I'm encouraged, to be around them and the openness that they show, to talk about God and things in their life and how that affects them and why they do what they do to some extent. I think they're more open to that than I may have been. So I feel good about that. I just was involved with the selecting of VOAG teachers in the local school and children or young folks that were there with us. I just totally am impressed with the ability to articulate themselves and be able to talk about serious things, where I'm not sure I did.
Yeah. And so, when you come back, or when you just came back from the border or from Guatemala, do you also have talks with them? And then how do they react if you do have conversations with them about your experience, even if it's only your own grandchildren? So
That's a good question. We talk about it off and on in conversation. We haven't sat them down and said, here, now what do you think about this? I would say that they're interested in what's going on. I think my fear is that they're not hearing what they ought to hear about it. I think whether it's media, social media, whatever they're watching, I think can be very slanted, and I don't like to hear that. I think I would say that. I think what we've seen and what I hear on news and social media is not what I've seen.
Are younger people also aware that you're doing it? Are they part of the growing project? Or not?
Well, we have the local FFA does the books for the growing project. So, I mean, their teacher is part of the growing project, and so he's kind of set that up with the kids. So, I mean, in that way, there is some awareness of that, and some of the younger adults have done like the chores with the cattle and that sort of thing. They volunteered their time for that, and may come and help set up like at the celebration, the annual celebration. As far as donating to, I do not so much necessarily. I mean, they don't have that kind of funds usually. I think they're aware that it's going on, and there's an openness to doing, some things with that. We're hoping to get them to the local FFA to grill the burgers for our annual meeting this summer, and just trying in those kind of ways to get them involved and introduced to, I guess, what we're doing, in hopes that, they will someday want to pick that up as well.
Okay. Okay, I want to bring us in a different direction, and that has to do with music is very important to me. So I always have a music question as well. So, and most people find this the most difficult question I'm always asking. Yeah, that's what I thought. So it is, if I ask you to mention a song or a piece of music that embodies for a big part what the two of you are about, what song or piece of music would that be, and why? And if it is too difficult to come up with a piece of music for the two of you, you can also do it, separate.
Well, let's go separate once.
Okay.
I'll let growing up Mennonite, we sang hymns. Okay.
Yes.
That is part of my heritage and where my music goes to a lot of time. So I'm going to say two songs here. The song "How Great Thou Art," demonstrates my thought of God and how awesome He is in nature and in farming. That kind of describes that. The other one I've sang to myself pretty often, and it's "Precious Lord, Take My Hand." And that was brought about through a tragedy we had with a business partner at the elevator that was tragically killed. And I used that song on a welcome at his funeral. So that song has went through my mind hundreds of times since then. And so I can't hardly not say that. I like the song. It's got a good message to it. And that's where I would go.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Well, I had also thought of the "How Great Thou Art" hymn for a variety of reasons, but probably the one that came to mind the most, and I'm not sure if it totally relates to this question, was just a simple little scripture song. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Because I think, the attitudes with which we come at all these things really make a difference. And that would be my prayer, that I can, have the attitude of God as I live my life and reach out to others as well.
Okay, can you, sorry, because you went too fast for me. Can you repeat the title?
Oh, create in me a clean heart, O God. I don't know what scripture is that refers back to. I don't have that reference in hand. But it's in the Psalm somewhere.
What I try to do is I search for those songs on Spotify, and we have made a special walk, talk, listen playlist. So all the songs that have been chosen by my guest, you can listen to them if I can find them. So if they're there, but I'm sure they are. Um, yeah, Jim, maybe this is a question to you because I don't have only listeners in the US. So my question to you is, if I ask you to come up with, what you would like to tell to the global audience about the US and US farming in particular. Yeah, what is it that you would like to share?
The U.S. farmers looking at a global market, very much so. Whether it be second, third world countries or China or whoever it is, we look at a global market and grow into that here in the United States. Like I mentioned before, the American farmer's feeding 155 people worldwide. And some people say, well, that's not necessarily important. Well, yes, it is, because let's think just a little bit in the last year with the threat of the Ukraine crop not being shipped. What has happened? All of a sudden, we feel like we might have a food shortage, and especially in those countries that need it. Okay, the United States didn't have food shortage per se, but I think a lot of African countries became very concerned about where their food is coming from. Here in the United States, in the last year, we lost almost 2 million acres to urbanization or something. We dropped them acres and we lost 9,350 farmers too out of the deal. So we got 2 million farmers doing 893 million acres. Average size of the farm is 446 acres. So I think the American farmer is very efficient. I've mentioned that before. I think we're doing the best job we can. We have things that make it easier for us in infrastructure that some of the other countries don't have. That makes us more productive. And I think U.S. farmers care about the world.
Yeah, and actually many farmers, especially those who are involved with the growing hope projects, I mean, they exemplify that, right? And that's
Absolutely
really impressive. Yeah. What I also, and we all slowly coming to the end of our conversation, but what I wanted to ask you, I mean, you are lucky in a sense that your farm is ultimately will be taken care of by your children. Not all farmers have that. That's what I understood. This morning I talked with another farmer, and it seems to be a problem. Children don't want to take over the farm. So, yeah, you have any advice, for the other farmers who don't have children, and what should happen?
Have two sons that really want to farm. It's that simple. Yeah. No, I think that is a problem, and I think we've seen, Maurice, in years after, say, 1980 or so, young folks didn't come back to the farm because farming was tough. Today, farming is profitable, and we are profitable in what we're doing. To some extent, you got to be innovative and see once where that niche is, kind of. Everybody wants to drive a tractor. Everybody wants to do that. That's simple and easy. We can all do that. But to figure out how to make money and be profitable and smart in your expenditures, that takes management. And I think we are blessed with that kind of people coming behind us and your
mindsets.
The mindset. I have friends that don't have sons that want to do that, and they're retiring. That's okay, but I really like where I'm at. And I'm very serious when I say that. I appreciate my sons really, really a lot, and their ability to step in behind me and say, I can do this. And it takes two things. It takes money, and it takes the ability to handle risk. I mean, there's huge risk in this thing, That's just, it takes a special person to do that.
And it takes a lot of hard work. They put in a lot of hours. You have to be willing to work really hard and long. You're not going to have a 9-to-5 job when you're farming.
Yeah.
And I think that's an issue for some people as well. I mean, what kind of lifestyle do they want to live?
Okay, my last question is about taking us again to Guatemala for a second, and because there we saw a lot of farmers as well. What impressed you most? What you've seen there.
Yeah, I have to think about that a little bit. I think we've seen their willingness to learn and adapt to what might be for them. I mean, they grow crops on places that I wouldn't do that. I would let the deer eat it or something. We've seen them grow corn on steep hills. In my United States mentality, it was very difficult to see that happen. But I was very impressed with the ability to adapt within who they were and what they had to offer to change and do that. We've seen that they adapted to having a few pigs. We've seen a few pigs, which is, I think, new to them. And even the sheep was somewhat new. So we've seen sheep and pigs being introduced that, ate stuff that typically went to waste, So I see that kind of ability to adapt. It was encouraging to me.
Well, that's kind of, I was thinking too, the willing to be innovative and I think the fact that they want to share what they learn then with their neighbors. I mean, they don't just keep that newfound knowledge to themselves, but they're willing to, share that and help other people also, improve their lives. And because I'm sure there's teaching on different farming techniques and what they were used to, which they have adapted pretty well, and new crops even, I think. So, and then to share that knowledge and to let it spread to the whole neighborhood, the community is a great thing.
Any last message or question or statement for the listeners from you?
Well,
I think pretty well covered that.
I think we covered a lot of things. Appreciate the chance to be a part of this, and thank you, Maurice, for leading us through this.
Thank you for your willingness to talk with me. I know you were scared, which I don't understand, because we have been through a lot already in Guatemala.
I'm not scared to talk to you. I just being interviewed is not my favorite thing.
You both did great. I really appreciate telling your story. I find your story inspiring. I think it's great what the two of you are doing. For your own community, but also for the rest of the world. And thank you so much.
With over 1,100 miles walked, Maurice is yet again training to walk 100 more. So for those of you who aren't familiar, which if you're an avid listener, I'm sure you are, the 100-mile hunger walk was started in 2012 by Maurice to raise funds and awareness to fight hunger and poverty around the world. This annual event came to be because Maurice was inspired by the spirit of volunteerism behind the CWS-sponsored Crop Hunger Walks, which are a community-organized charity event that takes place in over 500 locations across the U.S. each year. So because of this, Maurice decided to set out on his own journey and put his feet where his heart was. This year's 100-mile walk will take place from Monday, March 26th, to Saturday, April 1st in Seattle, Washington. And on top of that, our fundraising campaign will run until the end of the summer. All the proceeds will go to support CWS's global programs that work to create a world where there is enough for all. So, how does the 100-mile work? Well, each year, Bloom walks 100 miles through CWS and crop communities and spends his time meeting with our crop volunteer teams, with beneficiaries, with local community members, Political officials, students, artists, and other like-minded individuals like yourself will work to support their community, end hunger, and promote a healthy and nutritious lifestyle. This year's theme is centered around the inner development goals. The idea behind these is that we must first unlock and grow our inner capacity, skills, and abilities to fully materialize humanitarian transformation. These IDGs are guiding principles that help us achieve our goals as we work with local communities here in the US, as well as in the 60-plus countries that we work in, to help end hunger and poverty while building healthy communities through increased nutritious lifestyles, especially for children. So what are some ways that you can get involved? Well, for those in the Seattle area, you can come out and walk with us for a mile, maybe 2, or you can see how long you last. But don't worry, you can always come out and just say hi, meet with Maurice, have a chat, and then send him on his way. So on top of that, another easy way to get involved is to make a donation. Participants are also able to start their own fundraising page to continue their efforts by reaching out to their own communities to get involved as well. So to make a donation or start your own fundraising page, click the link.
Well, of course, you're wondering where. Go to the podcast notes and click in the links.
In other exciting news, this year, Maurice has been chosen to be an ambassador for Knox Gear. Knox Gear is a brand company who makes safety and visibility gear for people and their pets who love to walk, run, play sports, or anyone who lives an active or outdoor lifestyle.
And yes, you're right. Also, this link can be found in the podcast notes.
When the link is used to make any Knox Gear purchase, 10% of the total purchase will be donated back to support CWS hunger and nutrition programs. So for anybody interested in joining us, getting more involved, or simply just wanting to stay connected, you can send us an email at innovationhub@cwsglobal.org.
You're right. You can find the link again in the podcast notes.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, if you haven't already, become a Walk, Talk, Listen subscriber. So let's get walking together. And don't forget to hashtag go the extra 100 mile.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.